Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give podcast, episode number 18. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today I've got a guest, Peter Munnik from ICML. Peter started his journey in the Netherlands and then he traveled around the world, meeting his Kiwi wife, living in Queenstown, what a beautiful place, and then finally settling in Australia. And he was working in corporate. He was very successful, had some great jobs, really big companies, but he wanted to get out and do something, but he didn't quite know what he should do given his values. So he gives a great summary of how you make that decision and how he went about making that decision. He also talks about some of the challenges he's facing around working in the business rather than on the business. And this one goes for a little longer than normal, but it's definitely packed full of values. So please get your pens and paper ready or whatever you take notes with. So what's happening in the community continues to grow. So please continue to leave those 5-star reviews, loving those reviews. Also subscribe. If you love this podcast or others that you've listened to, please subscribe. That would be fantastic. You can also find out more about Build, Live, Give in the website. So that's buildlivegive.com. And also you can find out about our free closed Facebook group that's helping people that have left corporate, living a great life and giving back to the community. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Peter. So Peter, we're going to hear a lot about your story today, but why don't you just give us a bit more of your backstory on how you got to where you are now?
Well, look, my history, I'm from the Netherlands. That's where I grew up, went to uni. Always loved, being abroad, going abroad, learning languages. So I studied not only in Holland, but also in French Belgium. I did internship in France and went to Spain, to Madrid to study. I even lectured there as well at the uni. And then I met my Kiwi wife while I was backpacking in South America, in Peru.
Great.
And I dragged her first to Holland. She lived with me for a while, and then wanted to go back down under. And we lived in New Zealand for a year and a half. Had probably the best life you can imagine. We lived in Queenstown, so you can imagine the outdoor pursuits that we could follow there. But we needed some more finances coming in, so we went to Australia to live. We needed just a big city, and I sort of rejoined corporate life there. I started off my career after university, and by the way, military service as well. I was one of the last ones in Holland to have to do military service. I joined a company called Mars Inc. So that was my first foray into selling chocolate. I didn't only sell chocolate there. I was also working in marketing for the pet care division and had a great and varied career. But as I said, we wanted to go down under, so gave up everything, sold the house in Holland, and my then girlfriend, current wife, and I were free enough that we could spend some time traveling as well. So we traveled close to a year through Africa, South America, and like I said, ended up in New Zealand, and then later here in Australia. So we came to Melbourne primarily because my wife had a lot of friends here. So we came and almost had a family all at once. Which was really good to integrate into Melbourne life. So it was a really happy period. And I actually discovered that the parts of sales and marketing that I had enjoyed most were very closely linked to market research. So I jumped into the market research area and joined Nielsen, AC Nielsen at that time.
Right.
And I had a great and fun time there for about 5 years, and Cadbury Schweppes came up with a role that fitted me to a T, and I managed their insights from there for a few years until Schweppes and Cadbury separated, and I went with the Schweppes business and headed up their insights department from then onwards. And so I did that for another few years, and that was my springboard to start my own business.
Great, and we'll certainly dig a little deeper into that. But that's a great backstory, and you've certainly travelled and done some amazing roles. What's something outside of work that your friends and family may know about you, but our BLG listeners wouldn't?
Probably my wife would say that I'm a voracious consumer of knowledge, books, podcasts, news, etc. I'm always sort of reading and listening. I think it keeps me busy. I know there's some people that say you need to take some time out to think. And that's probably where my development area is. I'm always busy with taking things in, and of course at work, using that knowledge hopefully to create value and good experiences for my clients.
Great, and we'll definitely later on ask you about your podcast and books. I can't wait to get your recommendations. And if you sort of look at the moment that you decided to leave Schweppes, I think it was, and then go into your own business, take me to that moment and what was sort of going through your mind at that time?
I can't really pinpoint any particular moment. It's been a process. I've for a long time I've had the vision of having my own business, and in fact in New Zealand I had an idea, and that's also why we lived where we did. That didn't really work out. So back into the corporate world, and still fretting about what kind of business can I start. But there were a few things that I really wanted the business to have. A business needed to be financially really viable. I needed to be confident that I could live well of it. I needed to be passionate about the product, passionate about what I was doing, and it also needed to align to my life goals. And to be honest, for a long time I didn't really have good ideas, and what I didn't want either was something that one-on-one was dependent on my personal input. For instance, consultancy, so that it was only my hours that would determine my financial revenue. So I really wanted a scalable business model, and all those requirements basically let me wait, because I came up with quite a few ideas, but none really that ticked all those boxes. And it was really a moment where a friend of mine came and visited me from the Netherlands, and he'd given up his job to start his own project management consultancy business. And while he was visiting me for a few weeks, we spoke a lot about it, and I sort of coached him through that process. And it was during that process that I realized that there was a business model for me, and an opportunity where all those stars aligned. I could be really passionate about developing people. I had a scalable model in mind, by the way, very different from the model that he has also very successfully followed in the Netherlands. But it also adhered very much to my life goals. I've always loved developing people, and this really offered me an opportunity to work really closely with that goal. And that's how ICML's vision, developing happy and productive people really came about. So that was a moment when I thought, yeah, this could be an area, but it's not the moment that I decided to do this. And yeah, the process following was a fairly lengthy one. Although there has been a moment that there was a crossroads, and that's when an old manager of mine called me, and he basically offered me to manage an operation in Vietnam. And it was a very alluring opportunity. My wife really wanted it. It would have been a great expat job with all its perks, private schooling, etc. But what in the end made me decide not to go down that path was that not all those stars were aligned. It ultimately did not conform to those life goals that I formulated. I think it was in '96, and they have evolved somewhat, but they didn't align. And so that's a moment that probably the next moment in succession where we really edged more towards starting that business. And from then on, I've started doing market research, networking, and building a business plan, and that became quite strong, and the opportunities seemed to be there. And at some stage, my wife and I have made the decision, well, let's go for it then. And that was sort of 1.5 years after I started with the business plan and developing concepts and the likes that I really quit my job and threw us into the deep end.
Great. And what help did you get as you made that transition and you took that final step? Did you get any help from anyone on that initial start of your business?
No, I wouldn't say. I think the biggest help was from my wife, giving support, because I left a very comfortable corporate lifestyle. Every month we had a luxurious check coming in, and I really enjoyed my job as such. There was you're never certain also, when you are in a corporate job, but it was a comfortable life, and the support that my wife gave me, in that process with that decision, that's been tremendous. In terms of real, help in terms of content, coaching, and the likes. Perhaps my friend back in Holland, I had quite a few conversations with him around that. Actually, I've called another friend of him who owns another training organization in Holland, and that gave me some inspiration and insights as well. And I think my business plan modeled a little bit what that friend of my friend was doing, but ultimately the business has turned out to be very different from my original plan.
Sure. And if your partner was listening to the podcast today, what would you say to her about the support she's given you?
I've told her before as well, but I really give her a lot of respect and love for what she has done. My wife is a risk-averse person, and to give up a lot of what she felt like certainty for a very uncertain future, that was a big step.
Yes, and look, I know personally for myself, that was very similar. My wife actually is still in corporate, and I know that I probably feel guilty at times that I haven't expanded my business as quick as I'd like, so she could potentially leave. But yes, if I look at the kids, she took a back step when she had the kids,
Yeah.
and then she took a back step when I took this final. I think it's a great point that this is a journey your whole family goes on. It's not just you as an individual. So for those BLG listeners out there, certainly make sure you've got that support and that commitment up front, because it's going to get hard. And I'm sure, Peter, you've had times where, you've wanted to run back to corporate, or you thought, like, I can't continue to do this, because I think everyone has those days, but the support of your family is critical.
Yeah. Yeah, look, my wife said, look, I don't want you to keep your whole life thinking about what could have been. We just need to do it so we know if it really can work or not. I think that was very brave.
Great. Well, that sort of takes us to the next section, which is the build section. And, if you walk into an event or a networking event at the moment and someone asks you, so Peter, what do you do? How do you explain what you do?
Usually I just make it very simple. I say I'm in charge of a corporate training organization, that delivers leadership, communication, and other soft skill training. And that's usually where I tend to leave it, unless people ask further questions.
And if they were to ask further, what would you say then?
Look, often I just tell how I'm trying to be different with the organization, and that also comes back to my experiences as a manager in corporate world. What I often saw around me was people going to training, coming back, putting the manual in the bottom drawer, and keeping on going the way they had been before. And especially because of the way we did things at Mars Inc. I think they had a very good system. Some processes that I retained from that was having conversations with my staff before they went on training, talking about objectives, talking about their career, understanding if there were any different ways they could acquire learning, how training would fit into their personal development, into their career development, what specific goals they would have for a training program, and then afterwards, coaching them with the outcomes of the training program. And this is not rocket science. It's just about asking some questions. How was it? What did you take out of it? What was most useful for you? How is it going to support your performance, your career? What are you going to do? What help do you need? When are we going to dial in next? Let's see how your implementation of your action and your action plans actually is. And that sort of process. That's what I've taken with me, and that is also what we, as ICML, try to do with our clients. Stimulate that interaction between managers and people that go on training. Make sure they have some coaching skills, and making learning a process, not an event. Ultimately, as an ICML training provider, it may seem in the short run that we benefit from delivering training events, but that is not where people really learn. It's a small part, and we want to support our clients to really develop their people rather than send them off to a training.
Sure.
That's a long story, but depending on the situation, I'd like to get into that, especially when I'm talking to clients or potential clients.
Sure. And how do you make revenue at the moment?
How exactly would you?
Just so
what do you mean
is it training, as in workshops, or what ways, online courses? What's
Right.
sort of your mix of products and services?
Yeah, look, the interesting thing is, in my business plan, I was planning on delivering a lot of public courses. The courses where individuals are sent by their organizations, and as an organization, you set a time and a date and a program. And it turned out that was only a small part. And I think the market has changed a lot. And maybe I didn't even research that well enough that part was already in a large decline. But that, in the end, has turned out to be a very small part of my business. The biggest part really is delivering in-house workshops for clients. And those workshops then are often coupled with coaching, small group coaching sessions afterwards. But it's going to companies and deliver programs to groups where the biggest part of my revenue comes from.
Great. And who are some of your ideal clients?
Look, I work across all industries. I work with state government, local government, government agencies. I work with manufacturers, consultancies, banks, you name it. Some bigger names. We deliver all the training programs for CPA Australia. So all the leadership programs they do, even in-house, that's all done by ICML.
Right.
And we did the whole learning program for BMW, Specsavers, Officeworks, 7-Eleven. Those are big name clients, and there's a lot of mid-tier clients as well. I think most of my clients are mid-tier organizations, say with staff between 100 and 2,000. Most of these organizations, they're big enough to have a learning and development person or team, but they don't deliver all that training in-house. So they outsource part of that. And that's where ICML comes in.
Great. And what are some of the biggest challenges you face in running this business?
Personally, my challenges are the traditional working in the business and working on the business. And I know how, ideally I should tackle it, but I'm really at the stage where I either need to invest, heavily in either outsourcing or in, additional manpower, which is going to be a very significant investment, and therefore, is another big risk, because it will reduce my own income, that I feed my family with significantly. Mm. Or I try still to do everything, meaning a lot of sales work, writing proposals, visiting clients, having meetings, working with trainers, meeting up with new trainers. There's a lot of work that goes on there. But then also working on a new website, making sure that AdWords campaigns are optimized, making sure that marketing is renewed, new collateral, etc. So there's a whole lot that needs to be done, and the total is just a little bit too much to do by myself. But then outsourcing is often a significant investment as well. Yeah,
and look, we run an outsourcing operation, and we've done that for quite some time. And I think done correctly, you can do it in a way that doesn't bet the farm, so that it's not a massive amount of risk. But I do. It's working with the right providers and doing your research, because there are a lot of companies out there that talk a great game, but then they don't deliver. And I'm sure, some of your clients have been even at the end of that with some of the changes when, certainly when things have moved offshore. Some companies have done it extremely well and some haven't. So
Look, I've had that experience myself as well, particularly with pay-per-click advertising, which I've always done. And initially, I used the company to set up my first campaign, but it already very quickly came to me that they really didn't understand my business, and they didn't put enough in to properly understand it. So ads were poorly targeted and it was poorly managed. So I had to take it back in-house. And I decided, because I spent a lot of money there, that there must be efficiency to be gained. So I looked for a large and seemingly reputable organization. They set up a new campaign, and then they kept on sending checks, and I kept on asking, "What are you doing?" And I saw that there were very few changes. So it really seemed that it appeared that they were more interested in cashing the checks than really working on my campaigns. And that's why I've taken it back in-house again. And so the pay-per-click campaign is one of those things that I'm managing again.
Yeah, and look, it was interesting. There was a post. We obviously are recording this before it goes live, but there was a post today in the Build, Live, Give Facebook community. It's a closed community, but there's a post in there around how do you pick suppliers, and there was a great, actually, example of a good community member that posted how they picked a SEO partner, so a PPC supplier. And I think it's really critical. So I think part of it is actually being in a community or being in a group where you can get trusted suppliers and not do it in isolation. That can reduce some of that risk, because I found in corporate, and you're probably the same, you're at Schweppes, I was Coke, it was really easy because you dealt with really big companies, and if the individual didn't perform, you just replace that. You basically asked for someone else,
absolutely.
but the company delivered. In small business, the person that's performing is often the owner, so a lot harder. So I agree. I do. It is a really great challenge that you bring up. It's one that many of our listeners have, and you've got to work on the business, not in it. But it is hard to transition. So it's a great point. And for those listeners out there, if you're struggling like Peter is with something like this, the Build, Live, Give community is one place that you can go to help solve that. Great point, Peter. And what we'll do now is just move on to the live section. So this is just give the BLG listeners a bit of insight into your typical week. And you may not have a typical week, but I know it's probably very different to when you worked at Schweppes as an example, but just take us through what you do on a day-to-day or a weekly basis.
Yeah. Well, the thing I love about having my own business is the control I have over my days. You never have complete control, of course, because things need to happen. Clients dictate part of that as well. But I really start most days with giving my kids some breakfast, and it's a moment I really enjoy. And I know a lot of friends that are still in corporate often don't have that opportunity. And usually get into my office with a very short commute around 8:30, and that's when I try to take some time, usually an hour and a half, on longer term things. So I try to avoid getting into my emails immediately. Right. I try to avoid doing the urgent stuff, but more the important and not so urgent work. And then, it's usually around 10 o'clock or so. Then I start checking email, making sure that I'm really aware of what's been happening over the past hours and potentially the previous evening as well, and take some time in responding, getting things on the rails. And then I might start a proposal, because my proposals are important and urgent. And then I'll take some time to call clients, chase them up, get back to them. But I do try to communicate with my clients very promptly, because I know they really appreciate it. So I, even though I know that the ideal is to check your email twice or three times, I might do it 5 times a day, just to make sure that I am on top of important client calls. And then in the afternoon, I might go to a client and do a sales visit, catch up. And usually when I go to see a client, I'm trying to combine a few different meetings. So I might meet some trainers or some other clients if I can. And then I usually try to stop working at about 5:30, and have dinner with my kids. Often prepare a meal and spend time with them. And my kids are quite young, 8 and 9. Spend time with them until they go to bed, and read for them, read with them, help them with their homework. And then, once they're back in bed, I do some more work. So usually 8:30 to about 10:30, and then I go home, have a bit of quiet time, read a bit, very occasionally watch something on Netflix. And that's my day. Actually, I haven't mentioned that I probably I get up usually around 6:30, 6:45, and then do some exercise on some machines at home before the kids get up. So that's basically a bit of a routine. Some days I'm quite lucky and I just can stay in the office all day, and those are the days that I feel I'm really productive.
Yeah, excellent. And I'd love for one person within Schweppes to articulate a day like that or a week like that. So I think you've definitely made the right choice, and well done for your wife for backing you in doing so. The next section we're going to mention was cause, but I know that we spoke prior to the podcast that you work with a lot of not-for-profits, and you can't favour any. So I appreciate that. And we won't go into the specifics of that, but I know that a lot of the leadership training and the work that you do is in that sector, which is fantastic, and we appreciate that. So the last section is the take action section. So I'm just going to ask you some questions and just get some quick fire answers to those. So the first is personal productivity. What's your number one personal productivity tip?
Yeah, set time aside for development work. Don't get caught up all the time in the urgent and important, or sometimes they're not even so important, but urgent things. But really set time aside for the things that are not urgent, but are important.
Excellent. Great advice. And apps on your phone, what are some of the apps that you love to use on your home screen?
I think number one is DJ Office, DEJA Office, and that has allowed me to sync my Outlook with my Android phone calendar. Well, it's not the Android calendar itself; it's the DJ Office calendar, and also contacts, and that goes via the PC app Companion Link. That's a paid app, but for me, it's critical to continuously, be up to date, both on my laptop and on my phone, and that's the one thing that has allowed me. Another one is the CRM that I use. It's a very simple one, but for me, very effective, because I don't need it to do much more than capturing capturing history of my contacts with clients and of course their contact details. And that's Capsules CRM. That's only $12 a month.
Excellent. And you said at the start, podcasts and books. So a lot of BLG listeners would be listening with anticipation on what you're going to say on this one. So what are some of your favorite podcasts that you listen to?
Freakonomics Radio is right up there.
Great.
More or Less is another one. More or Less is a BBC show that gets into what they call the hidden side of everything, and it really helps your critical thinking and looking with some skepsis at all the information and data that's been thrown around, and I think it really helps with a good critical view on life. Freakonomics Radio is very similar in that way. I also love Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. He's an enormous storyteller, and it's just marvelous how he takes you into some ancient worlds and transports you there. He's enormously passionate and gives wonderful information.
Yeah, look,
so
he's a favourite of mine as well. I just wish he would turn them out a little more regularly.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's a limited number of them, although very long, but it would be great if you did a bit more. But then again, they are free, and you're getting basically a book almost for free, because he's talking he can talk for 14, 15 or more hours just on one topic in several episodes. But it's marvelous.
Yeah, I just briefly on that, you talked about how many countries you've lived and travelled through, which is fantastic. We took our family to Europe for 2 months last year, and I'd listened to a lot of his podcasts prior, so it was brilliant going through Europe. And certainly the Second World War, I listened to his explanation of that, and it just added so much. So if any BLG's listener is going or heading to Europe this summer, some of their time, I'd strongly recommend the podcast, particularly on the Second World War. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Great. And look, you have had a wonderful journey yourself. Plus, you must see so many different companies. You work in so many industries, across so many industries. What's a piece of advice you'd give to a BLG listener that is maybe just starting their journey of running their own business? What advice would you give them?
I would say don't listen to the naysayers. There's always people that can tell you how much of a risk you're running, how difficult it's going to be, but it is worth the crack. And not everyone is fortunate and does crack it, but it's really worth giving it a good try. If you succeed, it's fantastic, and already the process of going through it is tremendously rewarding.
Yeah, so true, and great advice. And how can people find out more about you, Peter, and your business?
Well, everyone can obviously find me on LinkedIn. It's just Peter Munnik, Munnik, and if you want to know more about the business, hop on my website, ICML.com.au.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for sharing your wonderful story, and I hope your wife gets the opportunity to hear this podcast as well. Please share it with her, and thank her for her commitment to your journey as well. And we wish you every success in the future and love having you in the BLG community.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for driving this BLG community. You're doing a great job, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that will be helped through it.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Peter. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.